This is a workshop about yoga for gardeners, which I'm prepared for my yoga teacher training with the Crossroads YTT 300 yoga teacher training. So I got interested in yoga for gardeners. I've been a gardener and a yogi for about the same number of decades. When I was first working in the garden, every spring I would hurt myself. I would end up at the chiropractor with a pain in my back or some kind of joint that had been overused. And then when I started having a much more regular yoga practice and really did yoga every day all winter, that spring I did not hurt myself. And every spring since then I have been able to garden without getting into deep trouble with damage and injuries. So I wanted to do this practice, this workshop, to help other gardeners learn the benefits of yoga, to keep them from getting hurt primarily, but then to know what the deeper levels of yoga can offer to the gardener. So we'll start off with an area of inquiry about enhancing strength and flexibility with yoga and avoiding injuries. And then we'll go a little deeper and look at how a mindful yoga practice can help you enjoy the work that you're doing in the garden, deepen your awareness of the natural cycles that you're involved in, and really open up your communication with the plants that you're working with. So gardeners love making things grow and being outdoors, being physically active. They like having fresh, healthy food, and they like being involved with the natural cycles of the seasons. They need strength, flexibility, and stamina. They need to be protected from injuries. They need to enjoy the work and what they can do. And they need to understand their plants and what they need. So yoga offers a practice that will help develop strength, flexibility, and stamina. It can help with self-awareness, with proprioception and interoception. I'll tell you more about that in the workshop. And the mindfulness that comes with yoga will help you improve focus and concentration and get you more in tune with your place in nature. So we're going to look at common themes that gardening and yoga share, and go through these areas, starting with strength and flexibility, going into the more refined senses of proprioception and interoception. We'll be more able to focus, be in the moment, and enjoy gardening, and then deepen our awareness and better serve the needs of our plants. So the common area between gardening and yoga will be a diagram like this throughout the workshop. So both gardeners and yogis work within cycles of the seasons. They work with the same basic elements. They cultivate physical ability. And if we develop our awareness, we can avoid injuries. We can develop our ability to focus and do the work well. And there's a connection to nature and just to the wider sense of the universe that you develop as you go into a deeper yoga practice. So first we'll just look at the seasonal cycles between gardening and yoga. Everybody's aware of this kind of cycle where the bud develops into a flower and the flower opens up and becomes a fruit, and finally develops into the full, juicy fruit, this wonderful food. Let's see if I can get the next slide. There we go. The seasonal cycles, I just pulled a couple of other diagrams of seasonal cycles because all different traditions are fascinated by the changes that we go through with the year, the solar cycle, and with the moon, the monthly cycles. So I just pulled this chart of the Wiccan year out. They have an 8-season solar cycle. They're divide our 4 seasons in half, and it's a more refined solar calendar. And then the one on the right is a lunar calendar that shows which sign of the zodiac is a good time to work with which kind of plant. So fruiting plants like the fire signs, and blossoming plants like the air signs, and leafy plants like the water signs, and the earth signs go with the root plants. So this kind of seasonal cycle is kind of universal, and they're all very part of being an earth-based tradition. So the thing that yoga and gardening have in common is that they end up eating with the seasons. So the sister science of yoga, Ayurveda, the science of life, recommends having very fresh seasonal food as a matter of health, and the gardener is eating from the garden and eating seasonal food just as a matter of enjoyment and taste. So here's a little picture of what seasonal eating looks like, starting in the spring with leafy greens, getting into the juicy fruits during the summer, and going into the harder fruits, the squashes, in the fall. And then if you have a good root cellar, you can be eating root crops all winter long. Here's a diagram of the Ayurveda system, which goes through a annual cycle and the seasons of the year, and these 3 different temperaments that are associated with different seasons of the year. So this looks complicated, and Ayurveda is complicated, and we don't have to go into it very deeply, but just knowing that there is an awareness of seasonal cycles in the traditions of yoga. So the next thing I'm going to look at is the elements, and what elements gardening and yoga have in common. If you look at the 5 basic elements that a plant needs, they are the sun and air and water, space and soil. So every plant needs these 5 elements in order to grow. And if you look at the chakra system that yoga offers, you see the same 5 elements. You've got the earth, which supports the roots of the plant, and then the earth chakra is called also the root chakra, and that refers to one's sense of support and stability. Then water is an important element. That's also basic and in the ground around the roots, and that's low in the body too, and this is the watery part of our physiology, where we have lots of juicy things going on in our gut. And then the fire element is sunlight, and the solar plexus is no accident, it's called solar, is the next chakra up in our system. Then we go to air, which surrounds the plant and which is part of it. It respires, it takes in oxygen and exhales. It takes in carbon dioxide and exhales oxygen. And we do the exact opposite with our lungs. We take in oxygen, exhale carbon dioxide. So that's the air element. And then the space, which the plant needs in order to grow and thrive, is associated with the throat chakra, where we make a sound. So there's 2 other chakras, the thought chakra and the chakra where we are in unity with the universe, and we'll talk about that more when we get into the deeper levels of yoga. So then we're going to do some serious study of the physical ability that you can address as a gardener and as a yogi. So the asana is how we develop strength, flexibility, balance, and stamina in yoga. And in gardening, in order to do that physical work, we need strength, flexibility, balance, and stamina. So that's our common area in physical ability. So strength and balance, gardeners need this in their arms, their shoulders, their core, their legs, and you need good balance to negotiate uneven ground. So there's a lot of heavy work involved in gardening, and this is where I used to get hurt when I would start doing this kind of thing in the spring after being relatively inactive in the winter. So this is one of the things we need. The other part is flexibility, being able to get up and down, and being able to tend to your plants, being able to either bend over deeply or squat down. Somehow you need to get down to their level. So lengthen the hamstrings, flexibility in the hips and low back are a big asset when you're gardening. Okay, and then the physicality of endurance. You're not going to be able to do this all day long. You have to do a little bit of this in between. So this balance between effort and ease is integral in the yoga practices that I'm going to show you. And it's something that gardeners know how to do just intuitively, is that you need to take breaks. You stop, you lean on your shovel, you take a breath. You look at the sky, you listen to the birds, and then you go back to working. So being able to keep that rhythm going helps you pace yourself and develop endurance. So here's a list of the asanas that I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk you through them first, and then I have a little video I've put in here that you're going to be able to have a demonstration and try them out, do a little test drive of these. So I'm going to show them to you. Here's the first one. Malasana is the squatting pose, being low to the ground. So it's a very natural pose for young children to take, and if you keep doing it as an adult, you can still do this nice deep squat. It might be something you've lost as an older person, and it's something you can develop if you're gently just practice it a little bit every day. You can improve your ability to squat down. So having open hips is a really good asset. So Baddha Konasana is where we open our legs, stretching them apart, holding your hands to hold your feet together. And then Supta Padangusthasana is pulling your foot towards your head and getting as much of a stretch in your hamstring as you can. So giving yourself a chance to let that hamstring stretch out so that bending over works a little better for you. Then for the core and the lower back, both of these really help develop strength in your middle. And also this one really works your legs too. So this one is Ardha Uttanasana, a half forward bend where you just hold yourself horizontally. And Navasana is called the boat, and where you balance on your sits bones and lift with your belly muscles and your legs. Okay, then these squats and lunges are really good for strengthening your knees and your legs. So Utkatasana is the fierce pose or the chair pose, and just holding this pose can really strengthen the muscles in your thighs. And then doing these one on each side, these are great for your knees and offer a lot of strength to that system. Okay, and then strengthening your arms, the plank pose, you're holding much of your weight with your shoulders and arms. And the Adho Mukha Svanasana, the downward facing dog, you're using your arms and shoulders to support your weight here. And then having a little bit of stretch to your shoulders and upper back so that you have more flexibility in your shoulders, that you can move them around, up and down and around. So Parsvottanasana is a folding forward pose. Anjaneyasana is a reaching back pose. And both of them increase your flexibility as well as your strength. And then a very important concept is the idea of balance. So getting all your weight on one foot and standing still is a great way to practice balance. So that helps exercise the vestibular system, that whole system in your ears that helps you balance. If you use balance frequently, regularly, practice it, you're going to be better at catching yourself when you trip or carrying uneven weight, you'll be able to balance better. Okay, so here's a video. If you click on this link, you will be able to see the video. So that was a nice morning practice to do. Here's a couple of things you can do in the garden when you need a little bit of a break. So you can stand up and reach back either behind your shoulders or over your head and get a nice back bend, because so much of your gardening time is spent leaning over and looking down. These are poses you can do in the garden. You can stretch your arms back behind you. You can lift them up over your head just to get an upright, upward-looking posture when most of the time you're looking down and leaning over. And these are another couple of poses you can do while you're in the garden, just finding a nice stretch as you bend over, or some side bends, or this wonderful hip circles. So just standing in the garden. You can do this in your garden clothes. You don't have to change into yoga clothes to do these. And this is a nice way to pace yourself when you're working in the garden. These are reclining poses I suggest for after you've gardened. You come in, you take a shower, you relax, and then if you're feeling tight in your shoulders, this one feels good. If you're feeling tight in your hips, that one feels good. And then this one is a great way to just stretch out your back. And then final relaxation, just allowing yourself to recline on the ground. You can either put your feet up on the wall, which is a modified inversion, or you can just stretch totally out and allow yourself to completely relax. So here's one more video to show you those